Welcome everybody to our webinar today. This is part of the Improving HPV and Pediatric Influenza Vaccination Rates in Louisiana webinar series. My name is Caitlin Sylvester. I'm with the American Cancer Society, and we're so happy that you could join us today. We hope that this webinar and virtual community will be a place where you can learn and have the opportunity to ask questions of the presenter and your peers. So we'll show you just kind of a quick overview of what we'll be doing today. So welcome housekeeping, then we'll move on to our presentation, and we will have time for question and answers. This education series is made possible through funding from the American Academy of Pediatrics and brought to you by the American Cancer Society, the Bureau for Family Health School-Based Health Centers, Louisiana AAP, the Louisiana Office of Public Health Immunization Program, the Louisiana Primary Care Association, Louisiana Shots for Tots Coalition, the LSU Health Science Center Dental Program, and the Southeast Louisiana AHEC. This webinar has been accredited for 1 AMA-PRA Category 1 credits for physicians and 1.1 contact hours for nursing education credits. All HPV and pediatric influenza vaccination rates in Louisiana Planning Committee members have indicated that they have nothing to disclose. It's also important for you to know that this session is being recorded for educational purposes. A video recording of this presentation will be shared following today's presentation. By participating in this webinar, you give your acknowledgement and consent for the recording. As such, please ensure that patient privacy is protected and do not provide any PHI during today's question period. Please make sure your microphone is muted during the session. You will have the ability to mute and unmute while during a Q&A session, or if you'd like to participate in today's call. If you are having any IT difficulties, please reach out to Ashley. You can message her in the chat box or call and text her at 225-505-7611, and she'll be able to assist you. If you have video capabilities, we encourage you to come on camera, especially during the Q&A portion. It helps us to make this more engaging and more interactive. And finally, if you haven't done so already, please add your name and where you're from in the chat box so that we can get to know each other better, and it helps us record your attendance. So with that, today's presentation is Motivational Interviewing, an approach to enhance practice, and today's presenter is Dr. Stephen Philippi, PhD. Dr. Philippi is the Chair of Behavioral and Community Health Sciences at the LSU School of Public Health. He is also the Director of the Institute for Public Health and Justice and Founding Director for the Center for Evidence to Practice, both working to bring evidence-based practices and supportive policies to state and local communities. He is a licensed social worker and a clinically certified forensic counselor. He has a 27-year history of developing, managing, evaluating, and providing direct services. Dr. Philippi is a PI on several studies, teaches, writes, consults, and participates in a number of professional and public service boards. We are so excited to have you joining us today. And so with that, Dr. Philippi, I'll turn it over to you. Feel free to start whenever you're ready.
Thanks so much, Caitlin, and thanks for everybody for being on. I have not talked about motivational interviewing in the context of HPV and influenza vaccines, so this will be interesting. But I'm glad that y'all had me. I appreciate, Ashley, the invitation. And so this is going to be a crazy, fast-paced conversation that is going to ask you for some interaction. So bear with me as I do that. I appreciate seeing where you all are from all over Louisiana. And you guys caught me just in time. I ended up with a summer cold yesterday, so I'm talking through my nose for whatever reason. All right. So, and I'm going to keep the screen instead of showing you the entire, it just, I lose track of the comments and I can't see y'all's faces when I go to full screen share. So somebody may have the answer to that too and educate me before we're all over. So we're going to talk about motivational interviewing. And I know some materials went out in advance, so hopefully you had a chance to look at that and have a chance to ask me whatever hard questions you have about motivational interviewing. But I'm going to start with a hard question for y'all. So just like you put your name in the chat, I'm going to kind of do a quick chat poll. So if you put a number on a scale of 1 to 10, how ready are you to be here and learn? So it is lunchtime. It is a Thursday. I think it's Thursday. Thursday, lunchtime. How ready are you to be here and learn? Scale of 1 to 10, 1 being, oh my God, no, I barely made it to the conversation. 10 being, I could not wait and I was here in advance and everything else. So scale 1 to 10. 7.5, thank you. I like it. All right, so I like people that round things and are accurate. So I'm going to pick on John for 1 second if I can, John. So 7.5. So that's not bad at all, right? Definitely ahead of middle. So if you're a 7.5, if you have a capacity to unmute yourself.
Yep, I'm here.
So I got a quick question for you. If you're a 7.5 and we really did this well today, what would get you to feeling more like you're an 8 or 9 by the time we get off this call?
Well, I'm an old geezer who's always looking for new tricks. And so I think the moving me to an 8 or 9 will be about sort of helping me understand how to use motivational interviewing in my day-to-day. And it might be in patient interaction, but it may also be in administrative work and dealing with the 140 employees who now work for me.
Wow, you get your hands full. 140 employees. So good. So you've got some hesitancy, but you've got a lot of openness to that. If you could learn some, and if I'm hearing you correctly, very applied stuff that could work with your patients and also potentially your the folks that work with you, under you, that would make a difference. Does that sound
Absolutely.
about right?
Yep.
Okay. All right. All right. So Motivational 101. So I'm not going to do that to all of y'all, but so you're going to hear a lot about readiness rulers. It's part of motivational interviewing, but then moving people to, so if you're here, how do we get you here? And one of the shortcuts I'll teach you about motivational interviewing, it's always forward thinking. But thank you for that, John. I appreciate you coming on. So we're going to talk a little bit about fit, a little bit about just introduction to motivational interviewing. If you didn't have a chance to look at the videos and materials ahead of time, go back and look at the videos. They'll do a lot more deeper dive than I'm going to have time to do with you. We're going to do a little bit of test drive, depending on how willing y'all are to open up your mics and talk a little bit, and we'll see how well we can apply some of this. So my assumption is always, motivational interviewing has been around for a while. So my assumption is most people have some exposure to it, if not a lot. So if you feel like I'm not going fast enough, I'm not getting to where you want to be, what you're hoping for, what you're expecting, please let me know. I'm happy to adjust. So the shortest version I can give you to motivational interviewing is the one thing that's really different about motivational interviewing from a whole lot of approaches to behavior change is it is constantly looking forward. There is a hard truth that we can't change anything in somebody's past. So it doesn't matter if you've tried 20 times to get them to show up for HPV vaccine, you've sent out all the materials, you've scheduled visits, they've no-showed, they've argued with you why they don't want it, all that kind of stuff. None of that necessarily matters, because motivational interviewing literally focuses on, if we know we want to move somebody to change and they have any desire, ability, reason, or need to change, then we need to move them forward. We don't look back. I can't change history, so how do we move them forward? How do we change the future? And that's the very short version of motivational interviewing. There's a fit motivational interviewing. I wish I could put up here HPV and vaccines, but influenza vaccines, everything, I can't. I'm sure it's been done. You guys probably could tell me faster than I could find it, whether you've seen motivational interviewing in action in y'all's health clinics and world. But it's been used in a lot of different things. Historically, it came out of substance use, but it has been used in many, many facets of healthcare to help move people to change. Again, 30,000 foot view of motivational interviewing. What are we trying to do? You're really trying to answer for the person, just like I did the very quick example with John at the beginning, is what's in it for me, not me as the provider, but what's in it for your client, your consumer, your patient. So what is their values? What are their beliefs? How is it going to help them? And if you can answer that question, then you're going to be well into your way into motivational interviewing. For example, I'm not a mind reader, but I'm guessing everybody that dialed into this call and is on trying to learn, you've already asked that question. What's in this hour for me? And it's not, it sounds selfish, but it's not. It's what we do as human beings. We show up at a meeting. What's in this meeting for me? Why am I here? We show up at conferences. What am I going to get out of this conference? What's in it for me? So as a presenter, as a provider, as somebody that's trying to move people to change, that's what I'm trying to answer. What is in it for you? What are your values? What are your beliefs? What do you get out of this thing if we do it? And I try and get out of the way. So what is motivational interviewing? So motivational interviewing is the MI initials. The other initials, MET, a lot of people ask, what is that? That's motivational enhancement therapy. Motivational interviewing is usually coupled with all sorts of healthcare practices. Motivational enhancement therapy is actually a standalone behavioral-based therapy. But it is client-centered. We'll talk about what that means. And it's basically a strategic method of communication, right? So, but we're trying to enhance somebody's own motivation. I'm not trying to motivate them. I'm trying to find out what they're motivated for and pull that out of them so that we help them get to that natural rhythm of change for themselves. And it's not something I'm doing to them. The cool thing with motivational interviewing, just to give you some highlights from a whole lot of research out there, is it has two things. It has both brief intervention effects and it also has practitioner effects. So if you go back and look at the research on motivational interviewing, brief intervention effects, meaning that very quick, very short amount of effort applying motivational interviewing actually leads to more successful engagement and change in populations. Practitioner effects are, we like what we do for the most part. This is why we signed up. This is why I saw a lot of y'all are nurses, docs, things like that, care managers. We signed up for the job, right? This is what we wanted to do. Motivational interviewing, the practitioner effects is people actually reported liking their jobs more because, and it makes sense, right? If you are setting out to try and help people through change and you're actually successfully getting people to that change that you've been hoping to build your career on and everything else, you're going to feel better about your job. So all sorts of weird things happen when you look at the practitioner effects. More job satisfaction, feeling like they were more effective at their job, less sick time, less not reporting to work, showing up late for work, things like that. So it does have some interesting other effects than just getting your patients to do whatever the change, whatever the activity you're asking them for. So the other part of motivational interviewing is, so what's the whole point? If it's just this way of communicating, it's actually more than that. So most people get into motivational interviewing and they get the communication tools. I'm going to go through them really quickly with y'all. They get the communication tools and they say, oh, I'm doing motivational interviewing. You're actually not. You're just doing good communication at that point. To actually do motivational interviewing, there's two things that happen. One is you really start seeing what keeps people from changing. And it's this thing of ambivalence where I want one thing, but I also want another, and they don't really go together, and I'm still sitting on the fence. And you're helping people resolve that ambivalence. So if they start resolving that ambivalence and they really start talking about why are they sitting on the fence? What is this thing that I want to do, but I also at the same time don't want to do? I really don't want HPV, but I'm really afraid of needles or whatever point of administration you do. So they've got this thing and they're trying to keep these things coexisting, right? So you're helping them resolve that so they can take action. So that's one thing. The second thing motivational interviewing is, it's very, very directive. So that's where a lot of people that are very client-centered, very good communicators, they do really well with motivational interviewing until they get to the directive part. Because if you're not helping somebody change their behavior, you're also not doing motivational interviewing. So it's directive, and it's also helping people resolve this ambivalence that they have by pulling that stuff out of the person themselves, their intrinsic motivations to make the change. I think we've addressed all that. So you stop asking why the person's not motivated. For those of y'all that have teenagers at home, it's one of my favorite pieces that I learned the hard way. I used to ask my kids all the time, why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing that? The real question is, what are you motivated for? What do you want to do? What can we do? So again, you're not asking the past, why aren't you doing something? Why are you not motivated? Because you're asking them to focus on the past, what's stopping them. You're asking them, what are you motivated for? What do you want to do? What do you want to get out of this? And you're pushing them in that forward direction, if that makes sense, hopefully. So motivational interviewing is based on 4 major principles, but we'll talk about the spirit of motivational interviewing. So it's not just a model, it's not just a technique. Like I said, it's not just good communication skills. There's actually this whole philosophy and approach to it that we try and get people to. Most people go to training and they get the communication skills. They may not ever get to the point where they're good enough to be really embracing of the motivational spirit, motivational interviewing spirit. It is person-centered, patient-centered, and it's based on this. So the spirit of motivational interviewing, if you get there by doing these communications, so I'm starting at the top and I'm going to kind of work my way down. But if you do all these things, what motivational interviewing is really trying to get you to do as a practitioner is be more in partnership with the people you work with, more compassionate, more acceptance, and more evocation. Evocation meaning you're not giving it all to them. You're not doing things to them. You're actually helping pull that out. And that's really the motivational interviewing spirit. So it's very person-centered in that way. I do things with you. I try and be understanding and accept that you are where you are, but we're trying to figure out how to move you forward. And I'm trying to figure out how to move you forward by pulling this from within you, not me being a cheerleader in your motivation. Your source of motivation is you. I'm just using skills to get to that source of motivation, which is you. And if you do that, then you've actually hit the higher rungs of motivational interviewing. And that's what we really truly hope for, is to get to that. That's the spirit of motivational interviewing, is seeing people work in partnership with other people, being extraordinarily compassionate, accepting, and helping them find the reasons for their change. Kind of a funny thing, but I've trained this a bazillion times in many, many different folks. And the people that struggle the most with motivational interviewing are people that are really naturally charismatic and motivators themselves, because what they've learned in life is my charisma, my personality, what I bring to the table is what gets people to get excited and do this stuff. And that's actually a pitfall for motivational interviewing, because I can't be your cheerleader for life. I'm trying to pull this out of you so it's your cheerleading yourself. I'm working with you, helping you get there so that you can do this and you've got this thing and you do it on your own. You don't have to do it with me or wait for me to do things with you. So how do we get to the spirit? Motivational interviewing says there's a basic skill set. This is the basic technique skill set, but this is just the communication skills. So we ask a whole lot of open-ended questions because open-ended questions get us to a conversation versus a yes and no type answer. Yes, no answers aren't bad if it gets somebody at least engaged, but you don't want to stay there. You want to move to open-ended questions. So, explain to me what an open-ended question might be. So somebody would explain it. Was that an open-ended question? Yes, it was. Was the last question I asked you an open-ended question? No, it wasn't. That was a yes or no answer. Some of you are like, oh my God, it's lunchtime and this guy. I don't even know. How many of y'all followed that? maybe all of you. All right. But open-ended questions, they shouldn't be questions that they simply answer yes or no. The other cool thing I'll point out about open-ended questions, especially in healthcare, and I admit being ultimately guilty of this as a social worker, as a clinician, as a forensic counselor and everything, most of our screens, most of our instruments, most of our, even our health records and everything else are based on closed-ended questions. And I think it's a shame that we've kind of relegated human beings to, questions like, have you ever been sexually abused? That should have never been a yes or no question. Even, have you ever had legal trouble? Yes or no. Have you ever used drugs? Yes or no. None of those are yes or no questions. Human beings are complicated, right? Have you ever had a sexually transmitted disease? Yes or no. If you ask those in an open-ended way, right, it starts a conversation. You can check the yes or no boxes. But those open-ended questions would be like, so talk to me about any times that you may have experienced sexual abuse. It's just a more human way to approach. Talk to me about any time that you may have really struggled with influenza or COVID in this past year. Talk to me about any ways that you might have struggled with sexually transmitted disease, including HPV. All of that kind of stuff. It's just open-ended questions, much more compassionate, much more humane. Affirmation. So just to go back to my very quick example of John, thank you again for volunteering, is exactly that, is we don't get affirmed enough. And one of the things that we know about behavior is the more people are positive and affirming of things, the more likely they are to repeat it and or take a chance at it, right? So being affirming, it sounds like a no-brainer, but if you all just pause for literally 5 seconds and think about your day, you've been at work for a good 4 hours already, if not more. How much affirmation have you gotten about your job and your work in the last 4 hours? Most of you are scratching your head right now. We don't get enough of it. But to go to John's actually earlier point about his motivation is he's got, I don't remember if he's got 140, 160 people working with you. But if you want your workforce to repeat good behavior, you got to catch them doing it and let them know you appreciate it. So I'll give you my funniest example. So believe it or not, I used to be a probation officer in the courts up in St. Tammany and Washington Parish many, many years ago when I was starting out. And kids would come to my office and I'd say, thanks for being here. And they would all look at me and roll their eyes. And these teenagers would look at me and say, come on, Mr. Steve, you know I had to be here. Actually, no, you didn't. I think you made a fantastic choice. I appreciate you being here. The consequences suck if you don't show up. I get that. But you made a choice to be here. And I think that's fantastic. I appreciate you being here. It's just affirming, right? And it puts a different tone on the conversation. And then the last 2 points on the ORs are reflective listening and summarization. So just like when John was telling me what would get him to an 8 or a 9, I reflected back what I heard, so you wanted applied skills that could apply for your patients. It could apply for your workforce too, if I heard you correct. And you heard me kind of check that out, if I was hearing you correctly, so that they could actually correct it. If I'm not reflecting it correctly, I'm not listening well enough, and they can say, no, you're not getting it. I really meant this, and I'm fantastic. Thanks for correcting me. I appreciate it. But we're on the same page. We're in partnership. The more clearly I hear what they're saying, and it also gets us to rapport a lot faster when I use reflection. So that's where it's at. Summarization is literally this. So far this morning, I've talked to you about motivational learning, about where y'all are in the readiness ruler. We've talked a little bit about the spirit, and we've talked about the ORs. So I really appreciate y'all being here. So, are we ready to move on to the next thing? And they would say, yes, fantastic. Do you have any questions about what we've talked about yet? And you do that when you're in conversation with people to wrap up. You're basically saying, I'm wrapping up this and I'm moving on to the next thing in our care plan, the next thing in what we're hoping to talk about, the next thing on your evaluation, your assessment. And it just summarizes it, puts a bow around it so you can move on to other things. So here's your chance. So most people out the gates with motivational interviewing struggle with the reflective listening. So I'm just going to give you a chance if anybody feels brave enough to take their mic off, which I hope you will, is just simply try it. So here's what a client might say, something like, you might be good at helping people, but not me. I need to help myself. So how would you reflect that?
It's Jasmine from the American Cancer Society. I'll break the ice. So if someone or if a patient says something like that, I normally would advise like my clinics to try and turn that around. So, you tailor it to your patient. So, they need to help themselves. So how would you help yourself? Or where would you start? You try to put them into a space where they're in control, and then you start redirecting from there.
Fantastic. So hang with me for 1 second, Jasmine, because I'm going to take that. So thanks for being on the mic. That's always shows good leadership skills, right? Good leaders go first. So thanks for doing that. And the one thing I would tell you, you're obviously a well-trained practitioner, because this is exactly how we're trained, is to ask that next question, which is, oh, I see you, talk to me more about how you want to help yourself. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a great open-ended question, but motivational interviewing would say, pause, make sure you reflected and you get it first before you ask that next question. It's a great next question. Talk to me about how you might help yourself. So you're right on track, but if you could just reflect what you're hearing, not ask another question, just reflect what that patient's saying. How could you say that differently?
I think that if you couldn't ask a question, you would use the information that they were giving you. So you might be good at helping people, but not me. I need to help myself. So in helping yourself, we could possibly do X, Y, and Z. So they may have already talked to you about something that they were already doing, maybe to help manage, for instance, just anything, any kind of care personally, on their own self-care. And then so you would just start with that, and then show them ways to build out how they can build out instead of you putting it onto them.
Okay, so you are getting much, much closer. So I like where you're going. So can I give you a little bit of advice on this?
Yes, please.
All right, so I'm gonna also just shortcut a whole lot of stuff, since this is the abbreviated version of motivational interviewing. Motivational interviewing also says you don't give unsolicited advice, right? You don't do things to somebody. You actually ask permission. You can give all the advice you want in the world, but you ask permission. So, hey, can I give you some information, or can I give you some advice on that? They say yes, great. You've got permission. You're still engaged. You're not doing something to them. You're doing it with them, right? So that's why I asked. So that's very motivational interviewing. So motivational interviewing would simply literally be looking more like this. It would be, hey, thanks for believing that I can help people. I do think I can help people, and I think that's fantastic. You pointed that out for me. But I also hear equally well that I can help people, or I help people, but you're not looking for help from me. You really want to do this yourself. Did I get that right? That's reflective listening, right? And then I'm just checking it out, and they say, yes, you got that right. And then I would go exactly to Jasmine, your question. So talk to me more about how you want to help yourself. I think that's fantastic. So I'm affirming, I'm reflecting what I'm hearing. They can say, yes, you got it. No, you didn't. You misunderstood me, and clarify it. And I would say, thanks for clarifying. I get it better. Let me see if I get it better. But then get right to your next question. So again, it's just slowing down enough to make sure they know I heard them, and then moving to your question. Does that make a little bit more sense, Jasmine?
Yes, I see where you're going with that.
All right, awesome.
Hey, this is
Thank you.
John. This is
Hey,
John.
John. Yep.
My thought actually was I think a little simpler, is just to say, wow, it sounds like you're really the do-it-yourself or the tough it out kind of guy. Tell me a little
Perfect.
more about that,
No, you nailed it. So that would absolutely be a reflection. So you sound like you're a real do-it-yourself, or the tough it out. And the person could say, yeah, I love to do stuff myself. And this is what I would do. You've now bridged that next question. Or they could say, no, I don't like toughing anything out. I actually, That's not what I'm saying. I don't like toughing it. And you could then say, whoa, I'm sorry, I misunderstood you. So you don't like to tough it out. So, but talk to me more about then how you see helping yourself. So very good. I appreciate that, John. Thank you. All right. So all of this leads us to, right? So we're trying to get to that partnership, that collaboration, that whole pace by using open-ended questions, affirmation, reflective statements, all to get to this. And this is what makes motivational interviewing directive. And it also gives us that hook to get them to commitment, the action we want them to take so they move forward. So we're trying to get them to talk about the changes they're willing to make. And the more I know there's moments where I read a lot of research and I'm like, oh my God, somebody actually got paid to research this. This would be one of those. The more people talk about the change they want to make, the more likely they are to make the change. I know that's earth shattering to a whole lot of you now. I'm being sarcastic. So, right. So the more people are talking about change, the more they make the arguments for what they want to change, how they want to change it, the more likely they're to do it. So that's the basics of the research. And then the other thing is you start softening. If you hear them wanting to sustain old behaviors that have been ineffective, you start trying to soften that. So I hear you loud and clear that you really like to help yourself, right? And you're questioning whether I can help you, but can we explore that a little bit more? Are you open to sitting here and exploring that a little bit more? So you can kind of pull that down too, if there's a way to do it that's effective. But you don't want people sustaining things that you, at least at face value, don't seem to think it's going to get them to the change that they need or you're hoping to get them to. So what we're looking for, and this will make every conversation moving forward bizarre if you really think like a motivational interviewing person. So my world exists in this right here. Darn cat, right? It used to be darn C if you were trained in motivational interviewing years back. It's now darn cat. But you're listening to people as they talk to give you the desirability, reason, or need to change, right? So you heard that in that other statement. That statement that you may be good at helping people, but not me. I want to help myself. They've already given you the hook. They've already given you their desire or their need, which is I need to help myself. So as soon as you hear that, I'm in. That's motivational interviewing. They've handed me intrinsically, they've handed me their need to change, which is they need to help themselves. I can do this all day long now. So you listen for people to give up their desirability, reason, or need to change. And then once you hear that, anything that gives you a desirability, reason, or need. So I really don't have any time to get my kids into your office, but I really do want them to get the HPV vaccine, right? So they're trying to keep two things that don't work together well. I want the vaccine, but I don't have any time. So you're juggling this, but they're giving you a desire. I really want my kids to get this. I can work with you all day on that. So then once you've got that desire, that ability, reason, or need that they've communicated with you, then you move them to commitment. So how committed are you? If we could figure out a way to really make this work with your schedule, your time, how committed are you to showing up? Because we could do this. Oh, if you could move, if you could make it happen at X, I'll definitely be there. So definitely meaning like, 1 out of 10, you're going to be there. There's no chance of you missing. So you've got that commitment. And then you can, if you've got somebody committed to do something, you can then start talking about, so what's it going to take? What do we need to schedule? What do you need to do? What can I help you with? What steps do we need to do to make you happen? So that is, you have literally through PACE, OARS, and darn cat being literally two things, that's motivational interviewing in a nutshell. So that's what we're hoping to get. So when you start trying to get people to talk about their desirability, reason, or need, we really start trying to pull it out of people by asking them all sorts of questions, right? We're trying to pull it from them, not tell them why they should be motivated. So how do you want your life to be better, different? How confident are you that you could do X, Y, or Z? So what do you notice about all these questions?
They're open-ended.
Yes, thank you, Caitlin.
And they're very specific and directed.
Yeah, so you're being very open-ended questions, and you've got direction going here, and it's so you're applying those communication techniques that we were talking about, right? And as they give you the answer to that, then you reflect it, and then you ask your next open-ended questions, trying to get it down. Now, the one thing that I would say, a lot of people, and this is more of a pro piece here, is a lot of people are afraid of cons. And as much as motivational interviewing doesn't focus on history, you do want to talk about some of the present cons for the behavior, or why, or some of the barriers that are up for them to actually do it, because in reality, that's what they're dealing with. So you don't want to get totally oversold on it's all pro, and not actually be in true partnership with them and saying, so what are some of the things that are going to actually slow you down from achieving this? Because that's as important to hear as all the things that are good about actually doing what you're hoping to do. So don't be shy about going to some of the negatives about why they may or may not want to change. Just like I said, I brought out the ruler thing. Motivational interview, if you listen to people do it, they use the follow-up rulers, the importance rulers all the time. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is this? The interesting thing with the rulers is if some, like most of y'all gave me 7 8s, except for John, that's why I picked on him, right? 7.5, but you gave me 7 8s. All of that says, I'm not 100%, but I'm pretty good. So that's something to affirm. But what I wouldn't do to keep this moving forward, and what motivational interviewing would say is, that is so cool that you're a 7, that you're an 8. So tell me why you're not a 3 or a 4. I don't want to go backwards. I want to keep people moving up that ladder, up that ruler. So if there's a way that we can improve the engagement, the appointment, the meeting between us, and you leaving this appointment, you leave the appointment at 9 and you walked in here at 7, then I've done something well to engage you in this whole conversation. And what would you expect to us to do for me to get you there? So I'm just trying to move people up the ruler. If they say 10, say, oh my God, that's fantastic. You are obviously well engaged. I want to make sure that you stay there. So tell me what it's like to keep you at a 10, because I certainly don't want to get in the way of your motivation. All right. So as promised, we're going to get to, so this is, the rulers. You can, how confident you're due about making this change, 0 to 10, just an example. So I'm going to really focus on y'all's turn, right? A little comic relief there for anybody that are fans of any of this. I'm going to pause for 10 seconds because I know some are still reading. All right, moving on. All right, so here's what I want you to do. I want you to reflect and identify either the desire or ability, reason, need, or the commitment that they have. But reflect it and then tell me what is the desire, ability, reason, or need that you hear in the statement. So I'd like to be happier. So how would you reflect that?
Would you ask, what do you need to be happier?
So that's a great follow-up question.
I'm sorry, that might not be D, it might be an N.
Right. Well, actually, so I think that's a net talking. So Annette, what I would say is, what I want to know though is just a reflection without asking another question.
Oh.
So if they made that statement, I would like to be happier, how would you just reflect that?
I would reflect that statement as, I'm not sure what point of happy or sad that they are, but they want to move in a more positive direction of happiness.
Perfect. So I'm not sure exactly what point you're at, but it sounds like you really want to move forward. That's a great reflection, right? And you're pointing out actually the two sides that they're struggling with. I'm not happy and I want to be happier. So that's a reflection. So if you hear that, I would like to be happier. Do you have a desire, ability, reason, or need that's being pointed out?
It sounds like what they're saying is I recognize I want to be happier and they're offering that I might be willing to put the work in to do that.
Yeah, so they're giving you the desire and need. So again, motivational interviewing, as you start listening to the comments that patients make, you now have a desire or a need, one or the other. It fits both. But this patient has a desire to be happier. They have a need to be happier. So you've actually got your hook. They're engaged. I would like to be happier. Now, what can I do with that as a practitioner to move you to some of that? So then to go back to the earlier question, like, give me some ideas of, when you've been happier, or what does it look like for you to be happier, and things like that. Can I give you some information on what I've seen people that come in here, what makes them leave a little bit happier? All right, we've got more. I want to spend more time with my friends. How would you reflect that?
Maybe that reflection is, it sounds like you're missing that friendship time. What are some things that you could build in to do that?
Perfect. So you nailed it at the front, and then you went right into the question that you could have left off that. But yeah, it sounds like you really, your friends are important. You want to spend more time with your friends. It sounds like you're missing time with your friends. All of that's reflection. And the person would say, yeah, you nailed it. So they're giving you a desire, right? I want to spend time with my friends. So you've got a desire. So you've got that hook. So talk to me, and then go to your next question that you said so well, which is, so talk to me about ways that you might want to spend more time, how you could spend more time. All right. So I know we're close on time, and I got a couple of other things that I want to test drive this with y'all before we get off. But so in summary, all of this, what you're trying to do is resist telling people what to do. And as practitioners, clinicians, care managers, support advocates, a lot of times we spend a lot of time telling people what to do. And we're really trying to resist that. We're trying to pull what they want to do out from their intrinsic values and beliefs. Understand their motivation. So what are they motivated for? Not why aren't they doing what we asked them to do? Why aren't they doing it? But what are they motivated for? What's so important? What is drawing you away from the things that we're asking you or hoping you'll do? What are you motivated to do? What are you motivated for? And how can we jump into that? You want to listen with empathy. We know open-ended questions, affirmations all build rapport, which gets us closer and closer to empathy. So listening with empathy, making sure you're attuned to not just what they're saying, but what you're seeing. Motivational interviewing, I always imagine myself as kind of, there's nothing, it's not the Wizard of Oz. There's nothing magical going behind the curtain in my mind. If I'm seeing it, if I'm hearing it, if I'm feeling it, I'm just gonna reflect it back. It feels like we're really at a point where things are getting really tense in here. Does that sound about right to you? Kind of thing. So if I'm feeling it, or it sounds like you're saying the right things, but when I watch your face when you're saying it to me, you look really mad while you're telling me this. And I just want to make sure I've got this right. So are you really committed to doing this? Are you really frustrated because you feel like you have to, or what's going on? So really listening with empathy, and then making sure you empower them. My job is to have them take advantage and take charge of their life and do what they want to do. I can't hold their hand for forever on that. So here's what I want you to do. So think of your sessions, meetings. I'm going to go back to Caitlin's earlier point. Don't give any divulging information, and we're going to see if we can just do a little bit of this. But think of the last session, last meeting that you had that was really challenging. Is there anything about motivational interviewing, if you applied any of the stuff we talked about, that might have changed that outcome, may have changed how that went, if somebody wants to not give out any client information, patient information, and describe a situation.
I don't have a patient or a client example, but I do have a meeting with partners to plan a meeting
Okay.
or an event. And I kept asking, what do we want to do? What do you guys want? What do we want to do? Which I guess is somewhat open-ended, but I definitely wasn't figuring out what their motivations were or why we were having the meeting to have the meeting or what they wanted out of this proposed meeting.
Oh. So how could you have made that more motivational interviewing-esque?
Maybe asking, I mean, do you start with goal? Like, what is our end goal? And one other question I had is, do you use kind of those, I guess, buzzwords of desirability or reason? Can you pepper those in to help?
Sure.
Make sure you're kind of, I guess, going in the right direction.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So you could start there with an open-ended question like, I'm just wondering what everybody, we've got this thing coming up. What's your desire? What would y'all like to see? Or what do you need to see out of this thing we're planning? That's a great open-ended question. And then the other piece that I would say, and you always have these opportunities to reflect back. So as they give you those desires, their needs for this thing that you're working on, reflect back. If I'm hearing you correctly, it's this, this, and this. And they just nod, and you've kind of made sure that you're connected with that person. Then you go to the next person and say, so, what else do we have? But that reflection gives you that ability to say, I heard you loud and clear. All of us have probably sat in meetings where, you give out an idea and then they move to the next person. It's like, hey, did anybody hear that? I raised my hand or whatever, and I was willing to talk. And it's like, did anybody even hear it? So your ability to just hang there with them for literally 10, 15 seconds and say, I really appreciate that idea. So it sounds like you would like to see this, this, and this.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, I think the reflecting back is something that probably gets missed a lot, but I really like that.
And I don't have any of my, I don't think I have any of my staff on the call. They would probably say, oh my God, you need to do more of that in our meetings. But anyway, yeah, right. I get stuck on time too. And I'm like, oh, we got to get through this, All right. Thank you for that, Kaylin. I know I'm watching our time. So what I want to do is really get to this, I guess. So y'all work in a world that I do not. So I am real curious about some of these ideas that you might share with everybody on the phone. Most important is I'd ask you to share just because you may be thinking about something that nobody else has thought about yet in terms of your collaborative work or your independent work, but you share at least focus, mission, vision in a lot of ways across different areas. So where might motivational interviewing fit in the work you all do?
So I'll just speak up. So I am not in patient care, but in terms of education, and when you have a large group of students and they're having small group discussions, I'm thinking MI could fit in by affirming to students in front of everyone, or even in their small groups, that they're doing a good job communicating and working together for whatever outcome or goal that their case is presenting them. So I think maybe that's how I could fit it best in terms of transitioning them to see if they're more motivated to work as a team once they're in patient care. I think that might take more one-on-one with small groups, which I can't have. So I'm thinking about making sure for every session I affirm the skills, the positive skills that they're demonstrating.
Fantastic. And since I happen to know Tina well, thank you for that, Tina. You already do that very well, but it would be, I'm glad you see the other fit. So just affirming people, I do think if we really were honest with ourselves, most of us, if you think about your day, your interactions, the affirmations come few and far between, but oh my God, do we like them? You know, I like it when somebody pauses and said, Steve, I really appreciated when you said that. Really appreciate you bringing that up. You know, that's a really challenging question, but thank God you asked, or whatever. All of those things. So more affirmation, fantastic. Anybody else?
This is Ashley. So, as a director of an organization, kind of like Tina, I don't do patient care, although I do see where this could be extremely helpful for our physicians in having conversations about those folks who are vaccine hesitant, just around the entire vaccine conversation, in addition to really the specific HPV. But from an organization perspective, just approaching it from what the open-ended questions of what's your desire, what do you want out of being part of this organization, or you know, in strategic planning, what do you see as helpful, and really trying to pull some of those things out instead of offering it, to really understand that motivation and desire so that we can move along into, you know, the change element.
It's fantastic. And I like the way you said that, especially the instead of just offering it. I think a lot of times we get caught in that role, right? Where we feel like we're either in charge or we're responsible to make sure something happens. So I over offer everything that people are either supposed to understand, get, do, the actions they're supposed to take, versus trying to pull it from them first, where it is that intrinsic motivation. So I do like that. You know, even that idea of just slowing down, where I'm not just offering and really asking, you know, what are these desires, abilities? How does this fit? You know, where do we have continuity where we can move together? So I think you said that well.
I'm looking forward to using it for the rollout of the COVID vaccine, especially in the pediatric population, because we already know for some adults it's a real hard sell. But in the pediatric population, there are a lot of questions, and motivational interviewing is one way that we can address some of those.
Fantastic. Yeah, and you've got your work cut out for there, right? We know the uptake of the COVID vaccines have certainly slowed, but I've been pretty amazed. You know, what are you motivated for when somebody says they're really adamantly against getting vaccinated? You know, I always put on the curiosity hat. So what are you trying to achieve by not getting vaccinated versus what would you achieve if you got vaccinated? And could you tell me a little bit more about that? It's
well,
pretty interesting.
Yeah, I also think about the inconsistencies. They wear seatbelts, they wear a bicycle helmet, they're vaccinated for other things. So what are they really worried about with the new vaccines? And really help them understand that the new vaccines, while they are new technology for other, you know, for everybody from a scientific perspective, they're well studied.
So what you're doing right there, John, is perfect. So motivational interviewing should get exactly there, which is that aspect of, so what I'm hearing you say, you don't want the COVID vaccine for X, Y, and Z reason. But if you talk to me about the other reasons you've been vaccinated, there are these, and these, and you know, where's all this discrepancy coming from between this one and this one, and or the other things you do to keep yourself safe. Because if their desire is to be safe, if their desire is to be healthy, and you can get anything remarking to that direction, then how does what they're doing fit with that desire versus not, would be a great conversation. All right, and I know we're very close out of time, so thank you for that, John. I will say this, one thing about motivational interviewing, and I'm just going to allude to the next step issue, is most people shy away from motivational interviewing because like, oh my God, I don't have that much time. The more you practice, the faster you get at this. It becomes like second nature. So I will be honest and say it takes a little bit more time and effort up front, but the more you do it, the more you practice it, it becomes second nature in your conversations. And you'll find it doesn't really take any additional time. And if people are actually more engaged, more motivated to take action, then you're actually saving time in the long run. So there's resources for you. You certainly can call me or email me over at LSU. There's tons and tons and tons of stuff out there on motivational interviewing. There's lots of, actually, it was good to see Tina on the call with us because she knows there's also tons of horrible examples of videos on the internet about motivational interviewing too. So just because it says on YouTube that it's a motivational interviewing example video, don't take that for it being a good example of motivational interviewing. And y'all are welcome to call. And if you're really serious about motivational interviewing, the basic course in motivational interviewing, the initial course is about 4 to 6 hours, depending on previous exposure. And then you move from that into actually coaching, where you're using it and you're talking to somebody about the roadblocks you're hitting. And you just get more and more proficient as you go. On that note,
Thank you so much, Dr. Philippi. That was such great information. I know we just kind of scratched the surface of all that, you know, comes with MI, but that was really wonderful. Thank you so much.
you're very welcome. Thanks for having me.
And for attendees, there's with the follow-up email, there will also be information sent on the mental health symposium, which will be August 19th in Shreveport. So full day agenda with CME and CEUs, and it's just a $25 registration. So we want to put that out there for you guys. And thank you all for joining us. This was wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you all so much.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
Yes.
Hey, this is Abby, pediatrics, and I'm in Luling. I was thinking we did something called the morning huddle before we would start our day, you know, before patients would come. And basically it included our patient care coordinator, myself, the pediatrician, there's a nurse practitioner in my team, and we have 2 medical assistants. And we get prepared for our day, basically, for the patients that were already scheduled. And we also would do like same day appointments. But I just kind of feel like if we would start our day within our team with the motivational, you know, interviewing kind of concept, it can carry on throughout your day, you know, with your patients, you know, at every step, meaning myself, the MAs, and even the front desk. Our front desk also was part of that. Of course, we kind of got away with it when COVID happened, and we're all kind of in our own little spaces, you know, trying to be safe. But what do you think about that?
So I just give you a real quick thought on that. One of the things that I love about what you're saying is you're doing this with your staff. One of the things that we find is there's nothing magical about motivational interviewing in terms of a good form of communication between people, so that if you're doing it with each other, the likelihood of you doing it then with your patients when they come in goes way up. Because it's not like a light switch, right? Oh, we have patients here. Suddenly we've got to flip the motivational interviewing light switch on. This is just how y'all operate. You know, you ask open-ended questions, you're affirming, you reflectively listen, you talk about desirability, reason, or need to change things within the organization and move to commitment. And if that's the framework from which you meet and it becomes part of your culture, it will be that much easier to do it with patients when they walk in the door. So I think it's brilliant.
All right. Thank you. Thanks.
You're welcome.
All
All right. Unfortunately, I have to run.